Well, hello and welcome to our special campaign, Vaccinate India, in partnership with Google. Today we are going to be looking at several new issues, important issues. We are going to be looking at the state of vaccine development in India, but very concerningly, we are also going to be looking at what is known as the R factor. That is the rate at which COVID is multiplying. It is a cause of a lot of worry in this country, because if that R factor, and we'll explain what it is, goes above 1, it means that we are not winning the battle against COVID. In fact, let me come to that right away. And what you see are 8 states showing a rise in the R factor. The R factor is essentially the rate at which COVID is multiplying. And the government has actually warned that COVID is still raging in the country. Now, the fact of the matter is, you may be in a state where the relative numbers of COVID are low, but these are all India numbers. And while they do reflect the rise in COVID in states such as Kerala, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, this is an all India number, and the worry is it could be move on to other states as well. So if you actually take a look at this, on the 8th of August, it is at 0.99. Now 0.99 by itself means that you're still positive, that you're still winning the battle, as it were, against COVID. Ideally it needs to be 0.6. This is what the government believes it actually needs to be. So it's a bit high, but still under that 1 threshold, which is still some positive news. Now a week back it had actually gone to 1.01. Now that's not good. It needs to be, as I mentioned, at least below 1, and ideally 0.6 and lower. 2 weeks back it was 0.97. 4 weeks back it was 0.95. So India appears to have pulled it back just a little bit. We do not want this at 1, because that would result in a lot of problems. But let's take a look now at another couple of details. Firstly, let's give you the overall situation as far as vaccination is concerned. Worldwide first, 15.3% of the world's population has been fully vaccinated. That means that they've received 2 doses, or there are a couple of areas where single dose vaccines have also started being administered. Now India, though the numbers are improving, it's still nowhere close to where we need to be in terms of having a percentage of our population fully vaccinated. So this is actually what India is right now. India at just 8.1% percentage of our population which is fully vaccinated, and that's not where we need to be. Remember, by the end of the year, the target as far as India is concerned is 100% of those eligible among adults need to be fully vaccinated. Now if you compare where India stands with other countries, the United States is at 50.5%. So 50.5% of the population in the United States is at it has been vaccinated, and that's actually a really good number. It enabled America to have the confidence some time back to actually say, look, you don't need to be wearing a mask. Now they've had a bit of a reversal because Delta has been raging in the United States as well, so they are saying wear your masks, be careful, but India needs to actually get much more. Let's actually move on now, take a look at a couple of other details, and this is what I mentioned on the top of the program. Now the vaccines which are in development in India, it's a constant process. Covaxin, as you know, has already been administered, but it is under development and under trials in India on children. So that is actually really important, because among the first vaccines for children in India are likely to be Covaxin. But in addition to some of the other ones, there's Covishield. We know all about that. Now this is an interesting vaccine actually, Zytus Catalan. This is the Zytus Catalan vaccine. It's actually very much in the works, and it's seen to be one of those vaccines which has a great deal of potential in the country. So it's an Indian vaccine made in India. Safety in phase 1 clinical trials has been endorsed. It is now in phase 2 trials, and once it moves to phase 3, then you'd have a situation where it'll get introduced. Now Sputnik, it's being manufactured by Dr. Reddy's in India, but as you know, Sputnik has been around for a couple of weeks, and the problem as far as Sputnik is concerned in India is that we are nowhere close to the numbers that India really needs to have Sputnik make a real dent in terms of overall vaccination in the country. The numbers of Sputnik in terms of the rollout very, very low. At the moment, it's a 2-dose vaccine. There has been talk about something called Sputnik Light, which would be a single dose. But the initial batch imported from Russia, indigenous manufacture started, but until it picks up, and that will happen once the Serum Institute, which is the world's largest vaccine manufacturer, starts manufacturing this in scale, this will not really have a major impact in vaccinating Indian people. So the real hope is that this needs to improve. Now, one of the vaccines which has seen a great deal of potential is this one, BioE. Biological E is a really interesting Indian company. It's been around for a long while. It's run by, presently the leadership revolves around Mahima Datla, a young Indian woman. Biological E's novel COVID-19 vaccine is likely to be among the cheapest in the world once it's actually out. It will have a 2-dose regimen as well, and the expectation is that with its prices it could in fact be a world beater, perhaps even cheaper than Covishield or the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is already the cheapest in the world. So there is a lot of hope as far as BioE is concerned. There is an intranasal vaccine being developed by Bharat Biotech as well. Now this the entire technology behind intranasal vaccines is, well, it's still something being developed, and the hope is that if it actually does work out, that means that dispensing or rather administering each vaccine dose becomes a very easy process. A single dose in the nostrils over, there is no injection involved. The possibility of adverse effects go down dramatically. The time taken to vaccinate goes down dramatically as well. And so if you actually, now intranasal vaccines haven't really worked in many other cases, so this is very much something in development. So let's hope that that works out. Here is another one, and the final one I'll talk about today. It's called Novavax internationally. It's called Covovax here in India. They have now applied for emergency use authorization. Now this is already being manufactured by the Serum Institute of India in restricted numbers. It is very efficacious. It's a foreign drug. It's going to be manufactured and it is going to be delivered across India sooner than later, as soon as that emergency use actually kicks into place. So details over there as far as vaccines are concerned, but let's quickly move on now and take a look at a few more details. So R factor we'll be looking at in a little while from now. Here is where India stands as far as vaccination is concerned. Now again, it's improving because there was this high in the month of July. Then it started going down dramatically. That's not what we wanted. It's going up, but as we've been saying for a while, it needs to go up at a much sharper rate. So it's not doing that at the moment, and there is a big gap between where we are and where we need to be. So this gap needs to be filled really quickly. So let's explain why that is the case. Now, the aim, a minimum of 60% of our population needs to have both doses by December 2021 in order for India to be vaccinated. That's what doctors have said. The required rate of vaccination presently is 9.9 million vaccines a day, right? 9.9 million vaccines a day at the present rate of vaccination will enable us to cover our adult population by the end of the year for sure. But the actual number in the last couple of days, the last 7 days, just 4.9%, and that is nowhere close to where we need to be. Therefore, the daily shortfall, 5 million doses a day. The actual vaccinations on the 7th of August, 5 million, the shortfall 4.9. So that is not where India actually wanted to be as far as the speed of vaccination is concerned. But when one speaks about the speed of vaccination, it's important to remember that it also has to do a great deal with the availability of vaccines. So we've got two guests on our program today, and we'll be looking not just at new vaccines but at the fears about a third wave and what that R factor actually indicates. So we'll have that R factor graphic in a while, but joined by the director of the All India Institute at AIIMS Bhopal, Dr. Sarman Singh. Also Dr. Vishal Rao joins us as well. He's in the COVID task force in the government of Karnataka. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us. So Dr. Rao, let me come to you first. a lot of our viewers would actually want to know, what is the R factor as far as COVID is concerned? In simple terms, what does it mean?
Thank you, Vishnu. I think to understand the R factor, the simplistic thing is it looks at the reproduction factor, the R representing the reproduction. And generally, in simple terms, for us to understand how many people will one primary contact infect when he meets them is roughly what this number indicates. So earlier the R0 or the R0 was at around 3, which means one person at the beginning of the pandemic had a potential to infect up to 3 people. So now typically the calculation which epidemiologists and virologists look at is that if this R0, if the R factor is less than 1, then it dies down a natural death. And if it is more than 1, it becomes an epidemic, a pandemic. When it is equal to 1, it is here to stay. So I think that's why I think you elaborated this very nicely in the chart, that we are looking at an aim of below 1, preferably an aiming of 0.6, because that means that we are in the receding of this pandemic. And time and again, a new wave, a new variant re-questions this approach and looks at the R factor. Now, currently, if you look at R factor, it's one aspect, because a lot of the time R factors are calculated in retrospect. It is not prospectively, it is in retrospect. So while we are watching this today, we are seeing that the R factor is rising. It is also prudent to parallelly watch the positivity rate. So these two together, the R factor and the positivity rate together, give you a more realistic evolution of the pandemic in the current state.
Right, and that's really important. Before I go across to Dr. Sarman Singh, let me just bring that up full screen on your, just to look at what the R factor actually is. So look at the bottom. 4 weeks ago, it was at 0.95. So that was decent, not at 0.6 or below where we wanted it, but given the size of our country, 0.95, quite all right. That started going up. That became a problem. A week back, it was at 1.01. 1.01, we are losing the battle to COVID, without a doubt. But today, the 8th of August, it's now come down to 0.99. So that's welcome. Dr. Sarban Singh, how is the victory against COVID and essentially COVID prevention directly associated with administering more vaccines? Is it correct for me to say if the vaccines go up, the R factor will go down?
Yeah, absolutely correct. This is indirectly proportional, both the things, because the more the people you are vaccinating, it is bound to, the R factor is bound to go down. And that is the only way out. We have to, and very nicely you summarized in your opening remarks and charts also, that probably we are halfway of the vaccination what we require, and we need to put all efforts, whether that vaccine or this vaccine, but any vaccine, we must vaccinate, and the vaccination rate must be doubled, as you very rightly said. So this is probably somehow this flip-flop in our the R factor, probably the 0.99 or 1 or 1.01. These are probably day-to-day variations. So until otherwise, it comes significantly down around 1. It is revolving around 1. So I think we need to work very closely and very hard, and put all efforts to vaccinate as much as possible. But definitely we need to double the vaccination rate. So that is very, very significant. In addition to appropriate behavior, that is also very, very significantly important. You cannot forget appropriate behaviors.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's so key. We keep talking about vaccines, but COVID appropriate behavior perhaps even more effective until such time as you've been fully vaccinated. Dr. Rao, are we actually looking at a third wave? Because, if we look at this conversation a few months back, the conversation was that there will be a third wave. It could be very bad. Then the conversation changed a little bit, that there will be a third wave. No one knows how bad it's going to be. Now this R factor has gone up slightly, but in the last 1 week, we've actually reined it down. And let's hope it keeps going down. Based on what you're seeing, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, is it your sense that there will be ultimately a third wave, albeit a small one?
Yes, Vishnu. So my interpretation of this is, let's go back to the couple of months back. Now, if you look at March, April, in March, the positivity rate was 0.5% in the first week. It went down to about 4% by the end of March. And thereafter, in April, it crossed 5%. And by end of April, it came to 25%. Why I'm elaborating this is, we need to keep 5% as the watershed line here. And the moment it crosses 5, we know that this can jump logarithmically. Now, at this juncture, we know that the signature of the first wave was the D614G mutant, which is the first original Wuhan mutant that we discovered here, which caused the first wave. The second wave signature was the Delta variant, and we are far from winning the second wave because we've plateaued it by forced lockdowns, implementation of social behavior, and we are in the unlock phase. And at this juncture, like for example, in Karnataka, 33% of the age group 18 to 45 has vaccinated first dose, and above 45, 75% has vaccinated first dose. However, if you look at the population statistics, below 18, currently 0%, 18 to 45 comprises of about 50% of this age group, and only 20% of the age group comprises of above 45. So what we are still far away from that victory announcement to say that the third wave may not come. In fact, I believe that the third wave is around the corner. The third wave is going to be decided by a race between the vaccination and between the new variants that are going to emerge. And we need to be very, very alert for the third wave.
Dr. Sarban Singh, is it possible for us to predict when this third wave, when the onset of the third wave will be, based on, positivity rates presently, the R trends presently? Because people said it would be at the end of August. Is that something you still believe, or do you believe it's been delayed?
I think the COVID and coronavirus has been a disease and the virus which has failed many of our predictions. So I think this is the virus which is very. I would be little careful making any dates to say, and even to say that whether it is coming or it is not coming, because anytime anything can happen. Any disastrous mutant or variant, if comes, it obviously it might not be all vaccines. What vaccination we have, even in America, you said USA 50%, it might not work. So we are seeing already in the USA. So it depends on the mutation, the rate of mutation, and the what kind of mutant it comes. If it is highly infectious, highly virulent mutant, obviously we all will fail, and all efforts in vaccination, everything, they will fail. And that is the reason that I emphasize always that irrespective of which mutant or which variant, appropriate behavior will be the most successful thing which we can rely upon to delay or even to prevent.
100%. 100%, and that really is the goal of this program as well. We keep repeating it. We'll repeat it here again. Dr. Rao, this is a question that a lot of people are asking, and it keeps being asked to us, that look, we understand that we need 2 vaccine doses presently for us to get a decent amount of immunity in our system. However, how soon after a single dose do you see immunity within our bodies developing?
So if you look at some of the recent published data, there are data that show that after single shot, you have got immunity for up to 90 days. And the second shot, now this you have to understand that this is a prime boost regime. So the first dose is your priming dose, and the second dose boosts that immune system. And all the vaccines currently designed have been using the original design of the D614G virus strain.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that a lot more mutants are coming in, and that's why a lot of the companies have gone back to the original drawing board to see if you need to redesign a new vaccine, or some of them are talking about booster. But all of these are in the current clinical trial mode, and there is no proof currently to show that a booster or a modified dose is a modified vaccine is currently necessary. So at this juncture, what we believe is that I think the current vaccine regimes are good enough for giving us the protection we need. The coming days, I think already the pharma teams are in the race to understand and see how we can keep studying the evolving process of this virus and thereafter monitor this very closely.
Right. Well, let's see what finally happens. And I think the science on the booster dose is still science. It's not, there's a lot more we need to learn as far as that is concerned. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, very much for being with us. We're going to take a short break. Up after that, we're going to focus a little bit more on vaccines. It's been an important week. Two vaccines, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a single-dose vaccine that they've applied for emergency use authorization in India, and also Covovax, which is Novavax, as it's known in India. They've also done that. We'll take a short break. Come back with more. Welcome back. The US pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson's single-dose COVID-19 vaccine has received emergency use approval in India. That's what the health minister has said. However, there is no clarity on when it's going to be introduced in the Indian market in sizable numbers. Another drug, Covovax, which is Novavax as it's known internationally, it's being manufactured in India by the Serum Institute. They've also applied for emergency use authorization. But let's talk a little bit about the other one, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. It's being developed in India by Biological E.
In a big boost to India's vaccination program, Johnson & Johnson's single-shot vaccine being manufactured in collaboration with Biological E has got emergency use approval in India. The company claims that according to the Phase 3 clinical trials, the vaccine is 85% effective in preventing severe disease and showed protection against COVID-related hospitalization and death beginning 28 days after the vaccination. According to the WHO, the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine has been approved for use in 59 countries, including the US and Europe, and costs approximately $10. Meanwhile, Novavax has now applied for emergency use authorization by the drug controller. Novavax's COVID vaccine, Covovax, is being manufactured by Serum Institute of India. Novavax's COVID vaccine is a two-dose vaccine given 21 days apart. The company claims an overall efficacy of 90%. As per the latest rules, the DGCI no longer requires bridging trials for the approval of COVID vaccines in India for restricted use in emergency situation. This applies to vaccines approved for restricted use by US FDA, EMA, UK MHRA, PMDA Japan or WHO. Currently, around 50 lakh people are being vaccinated a day. But that's half the required number for India's target to vaccinate all by the year end. An NDTV Bureau Report.
It's time now for us to take this short break, but we're going to continue with this focus on our channel, on our network, in fact, on the need to vaccinate and the need to stay protected, because at this stage the battle against COVID is not done. We don't want people to fall ill, neither do you. Stay tuned, there's a lot more coming up.